Hello and welcome back to Bite Size Boxing. So some breaking news that has come in the last few moments. Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank Jr. 2 is now scheduled for September 20th in London. So the ambiguous location, I would assume this is either going to be Wembley or the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, subject to availability, I would assume. Given the fact that the Premier League season will be kicking off around then, well, I say around then, it would have kicked off by then, you would assume it may well be Wembley, but I guess we'll see. So what do we think about the fight? I mean, the first fight was one of those, it was a strange matchup, it felt a bit forced, to be quite frank, other than maybe a fair few casual fans. It wasn't really a fight that hardcore boxing fans were really pining for. They kept trying to make it, obviously it fell through for the first time for reasons we knew. And it's one of those things that, I'll be frank, the first fight I did want to watch. I came home to watch it and I felt ill literally an hour before the fight. So I ended up in bed, I fell asleep and woke up until the result in the morning and then rewatched the fight. And unfortunately, it was one of those fights that I really got the impression from social media and really from the whole event of itself when I watched it back, that it was one of those events that you really had to see live to appreciate. So I am kind of tentatively looking forward to the second fight. The first fight was a brilliant fight, in fairness. It's one of those ones where you've got a welterweight. At what level is Conor Benn? We don't really know. We forget that he is pretty untested. So we've essentially got an untested welterweight going up against a pretty heavily jaded and drained super middleweight. So it is a strange fight, to be honest. I think early predictions, is it really sort of I mean, it really comes down to, is Eubank going to be hydrated this time? Is the rehydration clause going to still be there? If it is, to what extent is it going to be there? Because in that first fight, although Eubank did outbox Benn, and he did win the fight, I thought, relatively clearly, he looked incredibly dry in that fight. And even in the fight itself, his skin was sort of a greyish colour, and you could see as hot and sweaty as Benn was getting, Eubank almost wasn't sweating. So he was exceptionally drained going into that fight. He looked drained in the face. You know, he looked how a lot of fighters look at weigh-in in the ring. So it's one of those ones where if you keep boiling yourself down like that, obviously he boiled himself down for the proposed first fight and then had a quick turnaround and fought Liam Smith and got knocked out. And this is a guy who's always shown quite good whiskers in Eubank Jr. So to get knocked out like that, it does kind of lead you to suspect that that probably had something to do with the rehydration clause and the making the, I think it was it 157 pounds he made or 159 pounds? I can't remember now. But yeah, irrespective, I think if Eubank has to make a similar hydration clause again, you might start to favour Conor Benn in it a little bit, in as much as obviously Conor Benn has got the youth. He is, he's got the dynamism. He's quite an explosive kind of fighter, and he does remind you of his dad in that way. But with sort of, I suppose, going into this early feelings, I guess you might lean towards Eubank. But it's one of those ones where I think I'd have to do my film study closer to the fight, and I'd need to know a little bit more about the sort of status of both fighters. Because if this is a fully hydrated Chris Eubank Jr., I'm picking him every day of the week. I think he's too big, he's too strong. But at points in that first fight, you could see the rehydration clause was killing Eubank. His stamina wasn't there, and especially one thing that Eubank dined out on when he was younger was that he was an explosive fighter himself. Right, he would throw those crazy combinations. I actually used to train in the same gym as Eubank Jr., and he would constantly be using those pads that are like stuck there. I'm not sure if you've ever seen them. I actually can't remember what they're called. And they're basically like static pads that are hit, and he would just hit them at crazy speeds. And that's something that we didn't see much of in that first fight, because he just didn't, not only has he aged substantially, he's now in his mid-30s, so of course he's not going to be as explosive as he was in his mid-20s, but he seemed to really be struggling with the rehydration. So again, I think it's one of those ones that if Eubank has to adhere to a similar rehydration clause, then you probably would start to favour Benn. But if it is on an even playing field, then I think it's Eubank all day. But what say you? You let me know. Thank you very much. Take care. Cheers. Bye-bye.